As a family, we've chosen a path that many find unconventional. While I absolutely enjoy a luxury resort and a bit of pampering now and then, my heart is most full when we're immersed in local cultures, off the beaten path, seeking real experiences.
Which is exactly how we ended up chartering a boat in Belize. When we first started looking into our charter, there wasn't a lot of information online, a few written itineraries, but we couldn't find anything useful on YouTube. So that's why I'm here. My goal is to share with you what we did, what we would do differently, and all the things we loved. We rented our boat through moorings in Placencia. There weren't a lot of options. Dream Yacht Charter was another option that we looked at, and Sunsail, but moorings seemed to be the best fit for us. In the past, we've done provisioning online, and the mooring space gave us an option to do that, but it was incredibly limited in the selection that we had to choose from. So I felt more confident with the three kids to just go to the local grocery store. We arrived into Belize City, took a hopper flight on Maya Island Air down to Placencia. That was an adventure. The plane was hot and small, and we flew through a forest fire, which was a little unnerving, but ultimately I still think it was a better option than the 3-hour drive by land. We did take our kiteboarding gear and had some difficulty with the size of the bag, getting it on the small plane and getting it back. We ended up not even using it because the winds weren't strong enough except for one afternoon, and we didn't have a great setup. So if you're thinking of taking larger bags, I would recommend against that. When we landed at the Placencia airport, we found an awesome taxi driver who ended up helping us get to the markets Friday evening and Saturday morning, and pretty much was just on call for us if we needed anything. We got into Placencia Friday afternoon and then unloaded our bags at the boat, went to the market and got all of our provisioning, spent the night in the marina. I did wake up Saturday morning a little panicked that we didn't have enough food, so we went back to the market. Belize was very different than the other places we have sailed in the Virgin Islands, and there are not markets or places to provision along the way for the most part. So I really wanted to make sure we had enough food with us on the boat. Our original plan was to get off the dock pretty early Saturday morning and go towards the southern islands, maybe Raye Caye. However, while the winds normally blow east in Belize, we had a couple days of northwest winds, and so that really changed up our itineraries. With the northwest winds, there were not a lot of islands that provided great anchorages or protection from the swell and the winds in the southern part of Belize, so we ended up going north to Hideaway Key. We did take the long route, as you'll see on this map, up through the Victoria Channel. Having not sailed in Belize, and it was cloudy the first day we got there and we're on the move, we were a little uncertain about taking the route west, so we felt pretty confident taking the Victoria Channel up, which worked well. It was a long sail. They were all long sails. We pulled into Hideaway Key, I think around 3:30 in the afternoon, and there was one mooring ball left. It was a pretty full anchorage given the wind direction, but we got the last mooring ball. We were able to go in and have dinner at Hideaway, which was fabulous. The next morning, we woke up and had some manatees in the bay there. We did try and paddleboard over to see them and never really got close to them there. Given that Hideaway wasn't our original plan to start our trip and the northwest winds were not relenting, we decided that the best plan for the day was to sail down to King Louis Island, have a little bit of fun with the water slide and let the kids play some games, and then sail back to Hideaway for the evening. So that worked out fabulously for us. We were one of only 2 boats in the anchorage the second night, but we spent the afternoon in Hideaway, snorkeled on the reef. The girls were able to play with Amma, Kim and Dustin's 12-year-old daughter. We played some games at dinner, had dinner at Hideaway again, and it was just a relaxing, peaceful evening. After spending 2 nights moored at Hideaway, the winds shifted. We had some north winds, some northeast, and we were able to move up to south water. So again, long sail. Can't stress that enough. They're all pretty long sails. But we went up to south water and dropped anchor for the first time in Belize. We did have a bit of north in the wind direction, but there was enough protection from the reef that it really wasn't a very rolly night. We were really excited for Southwater for a few reasons. One, we had some options for restaurants, which turned out to not exactly be the case. So on Southwater, there are a few options for restaurants. There's the Blue Marlin Resort and Restaurant IZE, which is usually open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the Pelican Resort. So I had emailed Blue Marlin a few times ahead of our trip asking about diving and was told it wouldn't be a problem. We came into Southwater and tried to get lunch at IZE. Unfortunately, they had just had a group of people leave, had no one at the resort, I guess you could say. They had no one there for the days that we were there, and they had a group coming in after, so they were closed, so that wasn't an option. So we went over to Blue Marlin to ask about diving for the following day, and they informed us they had a completely full house of university students and they weren't able to accommodate us. They did have a wonderful dive and snorkel map on the wall of the dive shop, which showed multiple places, especially for snorkeling. Since you can't rent dive equipment in Belize, going with a guide's the only option, so it's not really as important to know where to dive. But their snorkel site map was very helpful. We did also try the Pelican Resort, and they had no guests on site, so their restaurant was also closed. So definitely unexpected, thinking we had 3 options for dinner and ended up really having none, but it worked out. The next morning we woke up and there were manatees in the bay. So we hopped on the paddleboard, snorkeled. We were able to snorkel really close to them, and our oldest daughter dove in and was able to swim with them. They stayed around for a long time. We did meet another boat that had anchored at Twin Key for the evening for protection from the winds. They also went looking for manatees and only got eaten alive by bugs. So there are manatees in that big open bay right there off Water Caye. We gave fishing a try off the point, fly fishing, and didn't have a lot of luck, but saw a ton of bonefish. There are huge bonefish off Southwater. We just weren't skilled enough to catch them. Our main snorkeling site that we went to was over off Hideaway Key. So we did go inside the reef. We saw a huge old eagle ray that had lost its spots, and we also saw pufferfish and some other fish. Now the best snorkeling is for sure on the outside of the reef. So we did take the dinghy around and really just swam with it on the outside of the reef, but the coral was fabulous. There's a lot of activity and marine life around the reef on Caribou and on the cuts of Southwater and Caribou. We didn't make it around the outside of the reef on Southwater, but we did talk to some people that said it's also fabulous snorkeling. We spent most of day 4 around Southwater and Caribou, as I mentioned, snorkeling and paddleboarding. Given that we couldn't have dinner ashore, we decided to move the boat up to Thatch Caye or Cocoa Plum Caye, around that area, and try and have dinner at Thatch, which for us in hindsight was not the best move. They were listed as having 7 mooring balls around Cocoa Plum. We didn't see any of those. You cannot go ashore on Cocoa Plum. It is adults only private resort. So if you try and go to the dock, they will turn you away. We did make reservations at Thatch Caye. Went ashore pretty early where we were able to watch a fabulous sunset at their bar and around their open water swimming pool, which is essentially like a netted area in the ocean. There was a lot of sargassum for us because of the northwest winds, but we were told that's normally not there. So I wouldn't expect it on a regular basis. It was very difficult to find a place to anchor. There aren't sandy spots that we were able to find. There's a lot of grass and a lot of coral. And so it took us a while to find a good place to drop the hook. We had an incredibly rolly night with a north swell. And while Thatch Caye's a pretty amazing resort, there was okay. And we would definitely skip it going back to Belize again. So that was our least favorite stop of the trip. I think in hindsight, we probably would have gone into the Tobacco Keys and tried to eat at End of the Reef Resort, or maybe just do that area as a day stop and then head back south to Caribou. From Thatch Caye, we pulled up the anchor early in the morning and sailed all the way down to Raye Caye. We finally had east winds. We had great sailing weather on the way down. It was a very long sail, about 30 nautical miles, But we made it to Raye Caye, and there were mooring balls available. They were a little more exposed than I expected them to be. So we did have a couple of rolling nights, nothing that was unbearable by any means, but rollier than I expected them to be. Raye Caye was fabulous. It was very similar to what you might find in the BVI, USVI. It was a beautiful resort. The service was phenomenal at the restaurant everywhere we went. The restaurant at Raye Caye was fabulous. I will say you need to make reservations early. We got in the first day and made reservations around 1 o'clock for dinner, which was fine. We had lunch at Lionfish Grill also, and the food was wonderful. The kids were able to swim in the pool. Everything was right there together, so it was very relaxing. We then went over and checked out their open ocean water slide, and they have a platform you can dive off of, so you'll see we all did that, which was exciting. The water slide is out into the waves. It's a decent swim for little kids back to the dock. We ended up putting our life vest on our 8-year-old just because of the length of the swim and the swell that was coming in, but it was really fun for everyone. There's a few places you can just grab a chair or a hammock and relax and enjoy your time there. At Raye, we snorkeled off the northwest side of the island for the reef. Lots of large fan coral and brain coral. We'll say it looks like there's a decent amount of stony coral disease. And talking to one of the dive masters, it did come in a few years ago and they are seeing a recovery. So there is some color left, or there is some color coming back into the reefs, but it's not as colorful as you might expect normally. We set up a dive with Raye Caye to go out the following morning to the Silk Keys to dive with the girls and do some snorkeling. And they took us to the private island off the Queen Keys that they have. We snorkeled around that, and the coral there was phenomenal all the way around the island. Again, there was some stony coral disease, but lots of color. I will say the marine life in Belize was great. It wasn't as good as Roatan, but a lot of activity there on the reefs, and the reefs were in really good shape other than having some of the discoloration. We didn't see any bleaching, just stony coral disease. The dives are quite interesting. I did one and Matt did the other one with the girls. On the first dive, they went on a wall. They had a number of nurse sharks and Caribbean reef sharks that really enjoyed the lionfish. On the second dive, we were not on a wall. We were in about 50 feet of coral just on the seabed. And we had one nurse shark that followed us the whole time. The dive master fed him 5 lionfish, which he really seemed to enjoy. We had a couple Nassau grouper that followed along with us and a turtle. There were also a number of smaller reef fish, but we actually saw more marine life off the private island snorkeling than we did diving, but the dives were still great. Our last full day on the boat, we dropped the ball at Raye in the morning, and we're originally planning to go to Laughing Bird and remembered that we needed a local skipper on board to do that. So instead, we went to Moho. Freya's guide talked about this ferocious sand fleas on Moho, so we were a little hesitant to go. It is a private island now, and it's $10 or 20 Belizean to go ashore and use their facilities, their lounge chairs, hammocks, and such. You can snorkel, and we pulled our dinghy right up to the island and talked to the 2 caretakers there. They said that sandflies are no longer an issue, that they've been working to eliminate those. In Moho, we were able to find a mooring ball. It was not in the guide, but there were 2. One of them was broken, but the one on the northern side of the island was still intact and had good holding, so we grabbed onto that for the day. We did a lot of snorkeling around Moho, and the coral, again, was fabulous. We started on the north side and just kind of drifted back down towards the southwest. Again, the fishing was supposed to be fabulous. We didn't have a lot of luck around Moho. We did see permit. We saw 3 permit swimming and a lot of bonefish, but weren't able to get any on the hook. So we stayed at Moho probably 4 to 5 hours and then finished our sail back into the mooring space in Placencia. We had a pretty early flight out the next morning. We had to take care of those kite bags, get those to the airport and convince them to put them back on the small plane going back to Belize City. So we pulled in to the mooring space around 3 o'clock. From the mooring space, we had dinner both on the way in and the way out of our charters at Itsana Resort. It's about a quarter of a mile walk from the mooring space. There's also Blue Lagoon, which is right next door at the Dream Yacht Charter Base. We did not eat there. And across the street is Laura Bayou Restaurant, which we heard was also good. But Itsana was such a fabulous experience for us on the way in that we decided to go back there on the way out. They do movie night that the kids enjoyed on the beach for a bit. They could swim in the pool, and we could enjoy a little quiet time at the table, just the two of us. As far as things we would do differently on another charter to Belize, we were informed that the best tip is to go to Ivan's on the way out on the first day. Ivan apparently is phenomenal at catching fish. So if you would like to cook on board and have fish, then that's a great stop for you. We were also told there are lots of bugs, so put on the insect repellent. But stop at Ivan's, get some fish, have that for some meals aboard during the week would be a great addition. We would also spend more time further south in some of those islands. We didn't get an opportunity to do that with the wind direction, but generally on the east wind, it is very favorable to do so. If we had it to do differently, we would have made a stop at Ranguana. By the time we made it south, we didn't have that many days left, so we just couldn't squeeze it in. But there is a restaurant there. There's supposed to be great fishing. It looks beautiful. It's definitely one of the islands we would add into an itinerary that we did not this trip. One of the most surprising things to us on our trip were the amount of spotted eagle rays we saw. We turned our underwater lights on the boat every evening, and almost every evening we had between 5 and 10 spotted eagle rays circling the boat until we were ready to go to sleep. Surprises to me, just the distance of the sails. We were there in a fluke. We didn't have east winds the whole time. The winds were pretty light, so even when we did sail, we were still motor sailing in generally 7 to 8 knots of wind for the most part. But it was beautiful. They were long passages. We were able to navigate very easily using Freya's guide and just having someone on the bow with good light. So we were more intimidated before we went than actually going. Baylor, can you tell us what your favorite part of Belize was?
It was Hideaway because we saw a bunch of eagle rays and South Water. Is that what it was called?
Yes, South Water.
And South Water because we saw manatees and dolphins and eagle rays. I'm pretty sure.
For sure.
How do you currently book your travel? Are you using Expedia, Priceline, or another online portal? Maybe you go straight to the airline or hotel's website. But here's the big question. Why aren't you using a travel advisor? With me, you'll get expert knowledge, personalized recommendation, and exclusive perks, all at zero cost to you. You'll never pay more than you would booking on your own. In fact, most of the time, you'll save money. And here's the best part. You'll save time. No more searching dozens of websites, comparing prices, or dealing with confusing policies. And if something goes wrong, no more waiting on hold with a call center. You'll have a single point of contact, me, before and during your trip. So why stress over planning when you can have a seamless, stress-free experience with expert guidance? Let me handle the details so you can focus on what really matters, enjoying your trip. Let's start planning.